For our listeners who are equestrians themselves, what advice would you give them for starting their own young horses with that in mind?
I would say that the biggest thing is do everything you can to develop that try. There's no movement. There's no, if you move their shoulders over, if you move their hind feet over, if you can move them backwards, if you can move them sideways, if you can walk, trot, and canter, then your horse will be good. It's not that. It's not that, because there's horses that can do all of that, but hate doing it because the way it's been given to them has been negative. So the big thing I would say is establish the try. I keep mentioning Poland, but that horse couldn't do very much. We'd had 3 days together, and one of the days I couldn't catch it. But at the end of it, he tried as hard as he possibly could, and some of the pictures I've got of him are just unbelievable. I've got one picture of him, and he's got his eyes closed, both eyes closed, and he's just got his head in my chest. And I've seen that picture hundreds of times, and people send it to me every time it comes up and things, and it still makes me smile because it just highlights what the whole thing should be about. And I think that horse couldn't do a lot of things. He couldn't move sideways. He could back up a little bit. He could move his hips over a little bit. But he wasn't a trained horse, but he was a trying horse. And that's a very important distinction to make. If you've got a trained horse that isn't a trying horse, at some point your training will fail you. At some point there'll be something that's scarier than you are or more appealing than you are. You get some horses that are trained so well and are competing at the very top, but they still drag you to grass. They still won't walk in the trailer for you, or there's still some big issue. And it's because, yes, they're trained, but they're not with you. They're not connected. And that, I think, is what we should be promoting as good horsemanship, establishing that connection. And it is difficult. It's a very difficult place to be when you want to compete and things. So you want to compete, you want to go out and be competitive. And a lot of your competitors are riding with a great big bit and great big spurs, and they're doing things that aren't within your idea of morals. And a lot of good horsemen and women will have succumbed to that, and sad. But then, in contrast, there are a lot of people on the other end of the spectrum who actively won't compete because that's what happens. And I think there's a balance. There is a balance. And, to the people that are out there in the dressage world, in the Western world, in the show jumping world, whose horses are trained compassionately, it doesn't matter what discipline you're doing. You can't not have respect for those people.
Oh, yeah, perfectly put.
Yeah,
Perfectly put.
that would be my message.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, also, what advice do you have for equestrians? Because we were talking earlier about how I said you were brave and you were strong-minded, sticking to your own gumption, sticking to your own way of training, despite it not really fitting in with the competition, and despite you being down-marked for not speeding through the process more quickly, and you put the horse first. What advice would you give to
Yeah.
equestrians who actually
Mhm.
often are under a lot of judgment because of people in their livery yard or family members that might put a lot of pressure on them? What advice would you give actually for them to follow their own gut instinct a bit more easily?
Yeah. Very much like I said earlier, find your own people. Because I've been there. The livery yards and the friends and the other competitors and stuff that would want you to ride in a certain way or handle horses in a certain way. Peer pressure is a big thing, but if you're passionate enough about it, I think, then you will find other people that are also passionate about it. I think it's important to remember as well that even the people at the very top of any sport really still have the wobble. They still question whether they're doing it right, even though they're at the very top. And you would think that was validation enough, but often it's not. And people ask me all the time if I get nervous. I'm terrified going into pretty much every demonstration and clinic I ever do. It terrifies me. But I don't know why. But halfway through, I relax a little bit and do what I do. And I absolutely love it, obviously. And I think I've had enough experiences like Poland would always make me stick to my guns. And I wouldn't change the way I do things now unless somebody presented me something which appeared better than what I was already doing. And being open minded, obviously, is another thing. I think you've got to continually learn and be willing to learn from everybody. That's ultimately the most important thing because things like fitting, things are changing all the time. And if you stick to the olden days of there's only one type of snaffle, you're never going to be able to compete with the people that are using a bit that actually fits their horse's mouth. So yeah, stick to your guns, but be educated. There is so much information out there. There's one big topic that I cover on facial. There's two little holes in the horse's face here, which are called foramen. They're the infraorbital foramen, and underneath down here is the mental foramen, that's under the chin. And there is no way to fit certain very commonly used nosebands without basically constricting around those foramen. And the foramen are holes in the skull that are used for nerves and various things to pass through. But the trigeminal nerve at that point is the thing that we're focused on. There are certain nosebands that you can't avoid pressing on the trigeminal nerve, and that's why they work, quote unquote, work, because they're uncomfortable. That information is out there. The world doesn't like to admit to it because we've used those things for hundreds of years. So if you like something or you don't like something, get as educated on it as you can. I didn't like those nosebands, but I didn't know why I didn't like them. So I went and bought this. There's a few actually, but a few like anatomy and physiology books at like veterinary level. And you, some of the things you've got to read about 18,000 times because they don't make any sense for the first 17,000 times. But once you get it, you have a reason not to like the thing that you don't like or a reason to like the thing that you like. And the internet is a wonderful thing. Books are a wonderful thing. You can learn so much. And our brains don't live long enough for us to get enough in, but you can keep trying and you can get as much in as you possibly can. And ultimately, if your horse is comfortable and you're comfortable and you have fun, that's all that really matters, I think. And if packing out down the road is your thing, great. If going and competing is your thing, great. But do it in a way that is safe and comfortable for both of you.
Great
That would be
advice. Great
my thing.
advice. And how do you see the future of horsemanship evolving, and what role do you hope to play in it, Joe?
Oh, I think we're living in a very exciting time to be a horsemanship enthusiast. You know, I mean, even when I first started, 14, you would find a couple of horsemanship themed videos on YouTube. You could maybe watch Pirelli or Monty Roberts when they came over and did a tour, but that was maybe a couple of times a year. And this is only what? How old am I? 15, 20 years ago? 15, 20 years ago, the internet was around, but people weren't videoing stuff and streaming stuff and doing stuff like they are now. So in the last 15, 20 years, you've gone from barely being able to find what natural horsemanship was to there's somebody on every street corner now. And the awareness is building massively. But like with anything, now that the awareness is building, you you get the good and the bad. and it can be very difficult to distinguish the good and the bad. There are people out there who are absolutely fantastic and incredible horsemen, but they're not wonderful teachers. And a lot of the time it's because they've worked on their own quietly with their horses, and they've developed their feel and their timing, and they're incredibly consistent, and they're a wonderful horse trainer, but they've not spent time with people. And, but then on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, you get some people that have read a book, one book, very good at talking, and their understanding of that book might not be particularly accurate, but they're very good at portraying it, and the information that they're putting out there isn't always the best. Why I think it's so important to get yourself educated, because just because the local trainer said so doesn't mean it's the best way. It doesn't mean it's the best thing. And it certainly doesn't mean it's the best thing for your horse. What you do with that horse and what you do with that horse might be very different. It's hard to be confident enough in yourself to question a professional, but sometimes it is necessary, because try as we might, we're not perfect. And sometimes we get things wrong. And you're quite right to question it. And sometimes, even if you question it, if the person that you're learning from is open minded, they might just then question it themselves, and it might change things. But I think as well, with all the video and pictures and events and stuff that there are now, you don't really have to go to anybody without being able to get quite a lot of information on them now. God, you can watch me work for hundreds of hours on the channel, the Good Horsemanship channel. And there's not many people out there that don't have some form of video, whether it's a Facebook page or a website that's got video on. And pictures are great, but if pictures speak 1,000 words, videos speak a heck of a lot more. You can really get an impression of a person when you watch them ride, even if they're just cantering a circle. The little subtle movements that they make in their body, you can see if they're trying to intimidate the horse, if the horse is comfortable, if the horse is connected. You can usually tell just from a very small clip. And I think that's choosing who you learn from is really important.
And we certainly have learned a lot from you, Joe, just listening to you in this podcast episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Before you go, though, I've got to find out, what do your family make of, what do your show jumping family now make of the path that you've gone on?
I think at the beginning, it was a little bit, and then there was a demonstration. There was a demonstration I did, which I don't know if this was a little bit of not an insult necessarily, but a bit of a kick in the teeth. I don't think many people had been to any of my events. They were all very small in the early days. And then I did a demonstration with, I think it was a rearing horse. And I think I was really pleased at that point. If I had 15 people come to a demonstration, that was a big crowd for me. Anyway, that demo had 200 people, and the advertising for it had been with pictures of the horse doing this. Okay, so anyway, all my family came to help. I don't know if that's because they wanted to witness the death or what, but yeah, I think opinions changed quite a bit after that demo, because the horse did as I was told it would do. I'd never met the horse before, and then it finished up a lot nicer. I think that was quite a turning point too in perception. Because yeah, this way of doing things is touchy subject to a lot of people in the traditional world. It's getting better. There's a lot of people out there now who have had like loading issues or feet handling issues or clipping issues, and they've used a horsemanship practitioner of some description to get over that. And I know I've certainly worked with people like big show jumpers, dressage riders, venters, and they're a little bit apprehensive when you very first arrive. And that's scary, not necessarily working with the horse, but knowing that you're representing this way of doing things. Because if you really get it wrong, that big name influential rider is going to have an opinion on everybody else that's in this world. And that's scary. That's a lot of weight on your shoulders. But again, if you stay true to your principles, then I think even if it doesn't go particularly well, you can hold your head high. And because that's the big thing, arrogance takes over with a lot of people. There's been quite a few horses that I've been to, and it might be a long way away, but I'm like, you know what? I'll come back tomorrow, or I'll come back next week, or whatever, because this horse needs a break. And yeah, maybe we could get the horse in the trailer. Maybe we could get a clip now. Maybe we could do this now. But she's not going to be happy about it. And that's going to be a problem, because if you want this to last, if you want going in the trailer to last, if you want to be able to clip her again next year, it needs to, she doesn't want to be stood there dripping with sweat. Because if she is, you've trained her, but you've only trained her to stand still because you are more negative than the clippers or whatever. And that's not a nice place to be. I have a tendency to go off on a tangent.
We're loving the tangents. We
I
really are, because comes with the tangents is another epic story, Joe, that we're all getting really into. So we love a tangent because it's just another excuse for some storytelling. So thank you so much. For those listening who want to see you in clinic or meet you in real life or get in touch with a problem horse or an issue they're having, how do they do that?
The Good Horsemanship channel, obviously, there is so many different problems demonstrated on there. But being said, every booking horse is different. The reason that they book and the things that have led up to that horse is different. And there is a booking horse series on the channel with a horse that I was working with every day. That booking horse is not necessarily the same as your booking. There's an X-Race horse series on the channel that we filmed over 8 months. But that X-Race horse isn't necessarily the same as your X-Race horse. I go all over the UK doing clinics. I go up to Scotland. I go down to Wales. I go wherever there's people that want to develop their horsemanship. I'm based in Lincolnshire, so I teach private lessons around the Lincolnshire area. I also travel to West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, the Wirral and Liverpool, the Peak District, and various other areas. But if you were interested in a clinic or anything, you could just get in touch through my website, joemidgleyhorsemanship.co.uk, or follow me on my Facebook page.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on. We have so loved your tangents, your storytelling, and the different sort of pathways you've taken on us. We've had so many different examples of the ways you've worked with horses, and also encouraged us to think outside the box, to not necessarily worry about people around us who might be adding pressure or might be judging us, but to, in fact, trust our own instincts and trust what we think about our horses. So thank you so much for encouraging that bravery, because I think we
My
all
pleasure.
feel that, even on a small scale in the equestrian industry and in our lives with horses. So thank you so much for coming on today.